welcome to today's show, the Legal Edge podcast. How you doing today, Shane?
Doing well, excited. Like I say, it's a good week and feel pretty good. A couple weeks ago I had COVID. That put me down for a couple days, and feel like I got my groove back. Now I'm looking at the things I let slide for like a week or two, or even a little longer. Right? I had some personal issues. We lost my wife's dog, which we knew he was sick. We knew he was old, but it hit us harder. You know, we're empty nesters, so there's nobody in the house except for me and her and the dog, Teddy. And then the house got really quiet, and I didn't realize. I knew how much a part he was and how often he was around because he's always within 3 feet of my wife. But, then boom, he's just gone, right? And I realized, like today, or maybe on Sunday, I started realizing, okay, I had a bunch of projects I was working on and everything was firing. And then that hit, and then I had some travel, and then I got sick, and I'm like, dude, I've got stuff that's off cycle a little bit, right? Not off cycle, but it's not moving as fast as it needs to. And, that sort of brings me up to, and that happens across everything, right? And it's not like I go wildly off, right? It's not like I go gain 30 pounds and start eating cupcakes every day, or even Kit Kats, right? Or candy, which is my vice, because it's not in the house.
Right.
But maybe the diet doesn't tighten up, or maybe the workouts aren't as hard, or maybe you don't progress. And that brings us to today's topic, which is sort of like, why do you have a coach, right? Once you hit a certain level, why do you really have a coach? What do you need them for?
Yeah.
Are they really teaching you anything? Or is it mostly, you've got them for like accountability, somebody to challenge you on some things? And I think that's an interesting question because I've had business coaches. I've had coaches in one form or fashion almost all 20 years of my firm. Maybe like 3 years I didn't have a coach. And that was really just because I was sort of taking a break in between, what I mean? In between coaches. And I'd been with a coach 2, 3, 4 years. And I was like, okay, I need to try a different flavor of coaching. Yeah. And I hadn't found the next step yet.
Yeah.
After that.
Well, it's interesting. I remember as a little kid, I was watching. It was I was when I say football, but I don't think it was. I think it was basketball. But I remember thinking, and I remember seeing a coach. Right, it was NBA. I'm watching NBA. The best of the best. Right, these are the pinnacle of that sport. And I remember watching the coach, and I remember having this thought, like, why do they need a coach? Like, these are the best players in the whole world. Like, what are you going to teach them? Like, because I'm relating it to me as a little 10-year-old or whatever, and I'm going to I think it was called junior jazz or something like that. I needed a coach because I didn't even know how to play the game. Right, the coach is like, that's the out of bounds, Trevor. You can't go out there, and I'm like, oh, well, thanks, coach. Trevor, you can't just pick the ball up and run with it. You got to dribble. I'm like, oh, okay, right. So this is the silly things that I clearly needed a coach. Right. And so I needed a coach getting started. But then I was like, well, there must be a point at which you don't need a coach. But then I see the best of the best needing a coach. So, like, I think, not only why do you need a coach, do you ever outgrow a coach? And, like, that whole, I think it depends on maybe your upbringing, maybe who you are in the need for a coach. Because I think there's people out there for sure that are like, I don't need coaching.
There's a ton of people who will say that, right? And I've had people come work for me, and they're like, and whether you want to call it coaching or mentoring or whatever, but like when I start listening to a call they make, I coach them on it, right? How to do better, what they could have done better. And it's not like, well, you didn't follow the script, but it's actually trying to get them to understand why the script is there, why those questions are there, why we use certain words, why we don't. I mean, I had one, and she kept using very lawyer-like words, talking to clients. And I'm like, that's not the right way to do this. Had to coach that down and work on it. But I've had people tell me, like, dude, I don't really think I need to listen to my calls and coach all that. And I said, well, my example I always use is, do you know Michael Jordan? And I think everybody knows Michael Jordan. I mean, he hasn't aged out yet. Everybody knows who he is. And I'm like, okay, this dude, he played basketball in high school, played basketball in college, and he's played pro ball for I don't know how long, but let's just say 15 years. So I add up how long he's been playing basketball, and it's usually like 20, 25 years, right? No, but And I said, okay, so he played 25 years. He's arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, right? Maybe you could argue he's not the best, but he's certainly in the top 5.
Yep.
I don't think anybody could argue that.
No.
And I said, so here's this dude. He's been playing basketball for 25 years in the NBA, arguably one of the top 5 players of all time. And how many coaches do you think he had his last year practicing? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, I think he had a nutrition coach. How about a cardio coach? How about a free throw coach or a shooting coach? How about there's an assistant coach, there's a main coach, there's an offensive coach, there's usually a defensive coach. And I said, those are 7 I can think of, and I don't know anything at all about high-level basketball. Right? And I'm sure he had a mindset coach too, so that gets him up to 8. I'm like, so this dude had 8 coaches trying to help him play basketball better. And this is Michael Jordan. Yep. So you saying, I don't think I need a coach in my business, or I don't need to be coached on my calls or anything else. You're effectively saying, I can do this skill better than Michael Jordan can play basketball.
Yep.
And when you say that out loud, it feels pretty ridiculous. Because, I think I'm really good at talking to clients, but am I better than Michael Jordan at playing basketball? I mean, the dude gets paid, I don't know how much money, but a whole bunch of money to play basketball. And he's arguably the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, and he has 8 coaches.
Yeah. And what I think is interesting, so I think here's where I think people could get confused, though, because they're like, okay, I got it. So to be the greatest of the greatest of the greatest, right? To be in the conversation of the greatest who's ever played or ever done a thing, to be in that conversation, well, yeah, I need coaches, but I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a regular attorney who's just wanting to just build a nice little law firm for myself, maybe, do $10 million a year. Why would I need a coach? What would be the point for me? I'm just a regular person. And here's what I would say to that. And I learned this by usually human beings, we have to stack evidence to help us justify our decisions. So we need to see fruit. And that usually when we see the fruit, it doesn't necessarily have to be us. Sometimes it can be like a sibling, a family member, or a best friend, right? That they did a thing, and then you're like, oh, well, then they did that, and this works, so that will work for me too. But I was when I was first in the sales game, I'm really good on the phone. Like I just naturally, I have no fear. So these are some great characteristics that I can't take any credit for. God gave me those gifts, and so I get on the phone, and I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good just because I can just keep talking. I can just kind of weave a story, and I could just keep going. And my brain will just come up with things to say. Even if they're not really making sense, I can just talk so much that people I bedazzle them. Exactly. They're like, shit, I just want to get this guy off the phone. Yes, I'm going to buy it just so we can be done. Right. And so, but then I remember we had this guy come into the office, and this was back early. This is before I'd ever really created any wealth. And he comes into the office, and he's talking to the whole sales team. And he was somebody that the owner at the time of the company had paid this guy to come in and do a little quote unquote sales training. And we spent half a day with him, and he taught us these things. And I was kind of like, man, we'll see. I had a chip on my shoulder, and I'm like, I don't need a coach. I'm da. Right. It became clear, though, in that environment, which I know you've done the same thing to some of your team, Shane, where I didn't really have a choice. This was sales training that was optional with no option. I was going to implement this, and that was just the way it was. And so I accepted it. I wasn't a big idiot, right? So I came in. I was like, all right, I'll give this guy a shot. I'll give this guy. And he comes in, and he starts working with the top guys in the sales team. I was one of them. And one-on-one and auditing our calls, and then coaching us on the calls. And then we would role play. We'd get together in a group, and we'd role play with this coach, and then he would give us more coaching. And it was all geared towards making us better at what we did. And what I will tell you is it wasn't just me. It was me, and there was a handful of others that because we were the lead sales team for the whole company revenue just elevated. My revenue doubled. This was the first time I ever made $10,000 a month. And that was a lot of money, so that'll tell you how long ago this was, because that was it would have been 25 years ago, something like that, right? And $10,000 a month didn't mean what it means today. That was a pretty big number back then. I remember my mortgage on the house, I think, was $900 a month at the time.
Right. So that was
so $10,000 a month was, and I remember just being and I didn't necessarily quote unquote give all the credit to the coach, but I gave a lot of credit to coaching. And so for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like, because I don't know if I would have gotten there, and I probably would have eventually on my own, but it was the first real eye opener. And I was just a regular guy. You know, I might've been good behind a phone, being able to talk, but I wasn't Michael Jordan. I wasn't the greatest in the industry.
Well, I wouldn't either. Like when I started my firm, right? I mean, it was me and my wife. That was it. And I was a little frightened. I was like, how am I even going to do this, right? And then I found a coach, a guy who taught real small firms, and followed his program. And I think coaching, I don't look at coaching and say coaching is going to turn you from magically a C player to an A player, right? I don't do that. I see coaching as an accelerator. What you're paying for is you're paying for their knowledge and their ability to give you tasks and get you to do them. It's going to accelerate your learning and accelerate your growth.
It's not like Michael Jordan was a bad basketball player and then they made him a superstar. No, Michael Jordan was already elite. He already had the talent and he already had the ambition and the drive. He was already an A player. The coaching just accelerated him to superstardom. No different than you were already an ambitious person. Like you are already ambitious. Like you'd already gone through the ranks. Like you're like, okay, now I'm gonna do this on my own. You already had that ambition. The coach just steps in and says, listen, you want this to take 10 years or 6 months?
Right. And you said, can you outgrow coaching? I don't think you outgrow coaching. I think it is possible to outgrow a coach, right? When you hit a certain level, you need to you upgrade your coach, right? And it's not even that the coach is bad. Sometimes you've been doing their thing for 2 or 3 years and you need another smack in the head by somebody else, right? Or a different system.
Well, you can outgrow coaching, right? Shane, I don't think you know this about me, but like back in the day, this is like back in when there were CDs, we didn't have iTunes, none of that shit existed. But I was actually, and this was when I was young, but was pursuing a music career, and trying to be a singer, right? And I actually did sign a little record deal with a subsidiary of Sony and put out a CD and all this kind of stuff. So I was like this little rock star in my own mind.
Hold on, Trevor. Was that under Trevor White? Just so I know, because I feel like I got to go look on Spotify.
I know it's not on. This was pre all of that, so none of the stuff ended up. Yeah, but it wasn't the name that I used a pseudonym, and it was Micah Rhodes. Micah Rhodes, which is actually kind of cool because Micah is the name of my son who passed away, and Rhodes symbolized the road I had been on since he died. So I think my pseudonym was actually kind of cool. I'll send you a CD, bro. Legit, it's just a CD. But anyhow, the reason I bring this up is if
you order the book, you get a copy of Trevor's CD.
Exactly. If you get the book we wrote, you get a CD of this pop star from 25 years ago. But
I may have to get you to put it on Spotify.
I know, so that'd be good. We should do it. It'd be fun. You'd be surprised. You'll be like, "What the hell? That's you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
That's me.
But the reason I bring it up is I started and I was like, I want to be the greatest thing ever. And I hired a coach. I hired a vocal coach, right? And when it got in height and I had this first coach and I had this first coach for like a year and a half, and I outgrew the coach. It got to where my skill had exceeded her ability. And she admitted it. She looked at me and she's like, listen, Trevor, in order for you to keep progressing, I can't help you. I've gotten you.
And I think most good coaches are going to do that too, right? They're going to give you some feedback on like you're getting out of the zone.
They're like, you've done it. And then she referred me, and I ended up in my music career, which is about 5 years, maybe 4 years. But I ended up with probably 6 or 7 coaches. I ended up working with some big names in the industry that have worked and produced some big people. But, I mean, one of the coaches I worked with, I had to audition to even coach with this person. But at one point, I had a vocal coach that was just strictly working on my vocals. I had a performance coach that I was working on strictly performance stage presence. Right, what to do when I was on stage, and then I also had a theory coach, because we were working on songwriting, so they were helping with the songwriting, but the theory behind it and how to connect work. And I mean, it was, and then in my own, I was working on things that were outside, and so when I was going after, I had and I'm a young kid trying to pull this off, and I had 3 coaches. 3 coaches that are like, hey, you can go into this. What's interesting is I didn't connect a vocal coach. Maybe I could have a business coach. maybe I needed one of those until the sales days. And then I realized, and I look at this and I look back, and I know you're the same way. Like, I look at my life from with coaches involved. All it's ever done is accelerate what I already knew could happen. And it helped me avoid stupid, dumb things. And a lot of times the coaches would tell me something, or they would get me to see something in a different way, that I realized, oh my gosh, I was about to jump off a cliff. Not knowing it, because I was going somewhere I thought was going to work, and they're coming in with their experience and their history and coming saying, hey, I've done that. It won't work. What will work, though, is this.
And I think that comes into play sometimes, like, and we talked about it on another law firm or another podcast, when somebody was talking about, hey, I see Joe down the street who runs a law firm, and he seems to be killing it and working on it. If you just see from the outside, you're not going to see the whole system. You're not going to know everything he's doing. So you try to copy that. You don't know any of the back office stuff. It probably isn't going to work, right? I mean, maybe you get lucky 1 out of 100 times, but you're not seeing the whole system. You're not seeing all of it. You're just seeing that, and it may not even be real. I mean, that's what you also don't realize. I mean, just because they got a fancy car doesn't mean it's not leased. Doesn't mean they're not paying everything to keep that fancy car on. You don't know.
Yep.
I mean, so.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too, and this is what I've learned in the business side, especially with attorneys, right, coming into this game, it's very easy to get stuck in the daily grind of what you're doing, right?
100%,
and because you got to be in court, you got to get demands taken care of. There's all these, there's a lot of tasks, especially as you're starting, or you've been in it a few years and you don't have a massive team, right? You're kind of the point man or point woman, and you are required for a lot of these decisions, things you have to make. So your mind and your eyes are literally in the field. This, like in a football field, this is why one of the coaches, where do they sit? You got them on the field, but where's another coach sit?
Yeah, up in the stands.
Yep, because
the tower,
they can see a vantage point that you cannot see. So you're sitting there in the game, which is great. You got to be playing a game or this never works, right? You can't coach the bench warmers. They're just sitting there. Sit there better. Okay, good job, right? But when you're actually out there and you're saying, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to play this game, having someone on your team that can look at it from a different perspective, a different vantage point outside of the game. Right? They're watching the game, but they're not in the game. And that's usually where the most critical decisions, these are the audibles that come in when you're playing the game, that actually are the difference between getting sacked for a loss and breaking for a touchdown, because they can read what's happening in a bigger scheme. And this has been my experience with coaches in business. Right, because I think this is going to be the way. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go this direction, and I'll put a ton of energy and effort into it. And a lot of times, it'll take a coach who I've said I trust them. I've said, yes, I accept what you're going to get. I accept that you have a different perspective, and I don't always listen, meaning I don't always do what they say, because I have my own choices too, right? But there are times when they say something, and it just triggers me to see that vantage point they're talking about, and then I start to see, oh, you're right, that's probably not what I should be focusing on. That doesn't actually make sense yet. There's a lot of times, so then I'm going to move this, and having that person.
Yeah. So as we get closer and closer, I want to bring up a couple points and get your opinion on it, right? So one thing I did in my early days sometimes is I look at a coach and I'm like, dude, this guy costs some money. It costs some coins. Why don't I just buy a book, and can I get the same out of the book, right? Versus having the coach. And, I think to even assume that's possible, you have to assume you're going to dedicate the time to read the book and then break down those things into actionable items. Mm-hmm. And as a busy lawyer, I found that a lot of times you don't make the time to read the book and put it all into place. And then you fall back. You do that a couple times, then you're like, oh, I'm going to get the audio version. I'll listen to it on my work. Well, you can't write stuff down in the car.
Yep.
Or it's pretty hard. Now, I've been the guy who's trying to scroll while driving his car. Totally dangerous. Do not recommend it at all, 100%. And it's all junky and stuff like that. So part of a coach versus a book is the coach blocks off the time, y'all work through it, he distills it down, gives you action items usually, or y'all come up with them, and you go it versus cutting out the time for you to read and study a book.
Yep.
And I think the studying is important. So that is that. Two, what's the difference mainly, Trevor, in finding a free group, right? Like 3-4 guys getting together doing it versus having a paid coach or even a paid group. What do you see the difference in and success out of those, and what's the main difference?
Dude, I love that. I love that question because I see it all of the time. I literally just put a group together, and the guy who was wanting to put this group together, he was like, well, what do we do? He's like, do we, because and they were kind of like friends of his, and he's like, do we charge them for this or whatever? And I just laughed and I said, well, I won't do it unless they're paying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even care if I get the money, but these dudes have to pay. And and it can't be a little bit of money. It has to be a lot of money for them. Like not, it's just, it has to be, there needs to be some tension and pressure in there. And I think here's why. Here's what my experience. I've been doing this for a long time, like 15 years. When something's free, that's how you value it, right? Our book is free. We will give this to you. Go to legaledgecoaching.com. We will give you this book. Now, what's crazy is the content in this book. If you had the discipline and you could hold yourself accountable and you would take it serious, this will change your firm. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Now, here's the problem. Most of you will go to legaledgecoaching.com, you'll get the book, and guess what it'll do? It will sit here on your book stand behind you, and it will sit there, and it will sit there, and it will sit there. And you won't even crack the binding. The binding will be like all beautiful and perfect. You won't read it. Then some of you will take it a step further, and you'll be like the ambitious one. You're like, I'm going to open it. So then it's like, crack. You crack it open. And then you read the book, but guess what you don't do? You have no idea how to implement the book, even though it's crystal clear how to implement it, because you have a hard time, you've never done it, of translating information to doing, which is actually a skill set you have to develop. And then those who start to try to implement, that's great. You're that next level of person. Your consistency and accountability, no one's holding you to a frame. So you don't have anyone you're saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And so eventually, guess what happens? Nothing happens. I have the same concern with people that pay to go to an event. Yeah. If you do not follow it up with some form of an accountability level, and here's the reality. I wish it weren't this way, because people feel like, oh, well, why do I have to pay? If this information is great, blah, 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 blah. You have to pay because paying is what gets you to actually do the shit.
It is.
I remember paying a coach. I wired him $15,000 for 6 phone calls. $15,000 for 6. Some of you guys who've never had coaching before, you hear that number and you're like, what the fuck? You did what? 6 phone calls? You're doing the math in your head and you're like, wait a second. How could that be worth it? Here's some crazy shit, guys. You want to hear this? The coaching was fine. It was fine. He was an okay enough guy. I won't even say his name because I don't actually like who he is now. He's changed in the years, and he's kind of a douche. But he wasn't at the time. He was very helpful for me for one reason. Here's the crazy part. As soon as I wired him the $15,000, I changed. My wife, it was like I wired the money, and it was like a week later. I still had yet to have a call with the guy. My wife's like, man, this coaching is really working. I've never seen you this on fire. And I laughed at her, and I'm well, I haven't even had a call with him yet.
No,
and she's like,
all the money you spent $15,000 on coaching.
It was just the wiring of the money, and that was a really cool experience for me to realize. Again, I have so many on coaching and why it matters, but that was a grade of, okay, I have to pay. And what's crazy, like I said, what he told me, what we went over in the calls, not very valuable, honestly. Like, he's a good guy, but it wasn't like it was nothing earth-shattering. Yeah. But I'll tell you right now, that $15,000 was the cheapest investment I ever could have made in the future that's made me millions. Because I was willing to do it, and when I did that, there was something about, there was just some, and it's hard. It probably sounds like I'm biased, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm just telling you to spend money on coaching and blah, blah, it's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. And I wish it weren't this way, but I don't know any other way for it to work. Information is not hard to get. We live in a world right now where things like this book is pure gold for you. I promise you. I couldn't emphasize it enough. Everyone that's opened the book and started reading it so far, we've just barely released it. Everyone that's opened this, the feedback is over. It's uncanny. It's amazing. And the information is free. And guess what? You could pick up this device and get tons of information for free. You have access to pretty much every bit of information. If knowing something was enough, then there would be an uptick in the millionaires and the billionaires in the world.
And what I say about the information, right? I think there's tremendous value in it being distilled down into a framework, even if that framework is me having a conversation with you and deciding on the right path and going forward, right? Because it's easy to go buy a book. You know, you buy a book, it costs $20, $30. I've got a ton of books. I actually have read most of the books in my house.
Yeah.
Like 90%. But I have a ton of books, but you can buy them and set them there, and even if you read them, that doesn't mean you implement everything, right? The benefit of a coach is you guys are going to chat, you're going to talk, whatever it is, however long the calls are, and generally at the end of those, you've got some action items to do, and then you roll into the accountability portion, right? Whether it's a group or one-on-one, and accountability is not somebody forcing me to do something.
No.
But I think I would define it as you're just reporting to somebody what you did, and you don't want to let them down, but you also don't want to let yourself down, and you don't want to be embarrassed in front of your peers, who may be other people in the group. Is there what else would you add on accountability, Trevor?
Yeah, well, the only thing I'd say, too, about accountability is a coach is very good at being a mirror. It's all there. If you've got a good coach, they can mirror back to you. It's not, you don't look to a coach to be this profound guru. The reality is you already know it. What you don't know how to do is see it. And what you don't know how to do is hold yourself to accountability. And what I mean by that is your coach doesn't hold you accountable. And that's really what I would add to the accountability conversation. You hold yourself accountable. The coach is just there to expose it when you're out of line, when you're not doing it, right? It's like conversations you and I have had, Shane. Like I don't come to you with answers ever, right? When you're in conversations, that's not what I do because I don't have them. It would be arrogant as hell for you to think that a coach has those. So if you're thinking this coach is going to be this saving grace and this big savior of it's going to save everything, it's not how it works. But it's the most valuable conversation because it holds you. When I was in the frame with a coach that I have paid invested money into, what I found for me, it's not even the coach so much, but I would be embarrassed to not do what I said I was going to do.
That's part of what it is.
Yeah.
Right? It's the embarrassment. And that's one of the benefits to the paid groups. Because my experience has been unpaid groups. You have a couple calls, and then you're like, I'll just skip the call, or I'll skip the event, or I didn't get a lot out of the event because sort of they become like, look how cool I am. Look at the cool thing I did. And not really about what you're going to do and implement. Yep. Whereas the paid groups, you have some of the look at the thing I did, but it's usually under a frame of sharing ideas. Like, hey, you ought to try this versus me. And then they get you working on your own stuff.
Yep.
And once you pay a certain amount of money, you show up and you want to do well. And usually the higher the coaching costs, the better the people who are inside the group. And I don't mean better like better people, but they're more advanced.
Yeah. And they're more serious. Right? So if you've paid money to be inside of a room of people who have also paid money, you know that everybody said, hey, I put my money where my mouth is. I'm not here to mess around. I'm here to actually get things done. And this isn't just a futile exercise. And so I think as we wrap on this coaching idea, and obviously with the Legal Edge coaching, that's what we do. We offer coaching to attorneys just like you guys we're looking at.
It's not free.
No, the only thing you're going to get for free is this, and really it's kind of not free because I'm going to make you pay for to ship it. I'm not going to pay for shipping, but I'll give you the print cost of the book for free. Right? I'm going to set it, but we charge for it, and some of our groups are very expensive. Right? To play with us at the highest level, some of you would hear the number. If I were to tell it to you right now, you'd be like, "Who would pay that much money? Holy crap!" And well, there's certain people that makes sense for them because they need to be in that type of room because they have grown past where you can see. But there's levels of what we do, and there's always in the coaching space. I want you to just understand that it's an acceleration. I think that's how I would sum it all up. It's an acceleration, and it does it through a very solid framework of accountability. Will you do what you say you would do? That's really the most basic form. It's, hey, here we go. We're going. I'm going to do this week. A coach helps you by holding you accountable to what you said you were going to do. And then you have to come back into the environment and you say, okay, here's what I did. Here's what I tried. Here's what didn't work. Well, what could you try next? And it's just this constant repeat inside of the game. And it's very, very hard to do this on your own. I'm sure you can.
And it gets me to think like, a lot of people have went to a gym and they've done like a 6-week class, right, on whatever. intro that Jim might go to has new year, new you, kind of thing. And it's a 6 weeks program. In 6 weeks, they can teach you how to lift weights. I mean, it's not that complex. Yep. But the number of people who do that whole program and then who is still lifting 6 weeks later with the same intensity and consistency as they had during the 6 week program is abysmal. Mm-hmm. And if you go out 3 months, it's even worse, right? Yep. I mean, and that's part of the benefit of coaching is they just coming in and logging it, is enormous value, right? And logging it with your peers or people inside of it, everybody pushing towards the same thing, right? So you get not only the benefit of the coach, you get the benefit of some of the other members who are like, "Ooh, dude, I tried that. Mm-hmm. It didn't work." I've done that with some of my higher level groups I've been involved in where I've paid money to be in the group, and we're talking about vendors, right? And everybody in the group is, nobody's spending an inconsequential amount of money on vendors, right? Because what we get pitched sometimes as vendors, and they're like, spend 10 grand with us and you're going to get these great results. Okay, but then how are they at $25,000 or $50,000 a month? Right. And what we've seen is talk to some of the vendors and they're like, no, those dudes, for me, I spent 20 grand and then they fell apart after that. I couldn't spend any more money, or, hey, they're not very good. They're not good at this area kind of deal. So you start sharing ideas with other people inside the group. And it's pretty cool not to be competing against other people in your same space, right? Who you help each other out. I mean, even attorneys, they just start trading cases, right? I need a lawyer in Tennessee. We send that case over there. I mean, just little things that make it just easier. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an accelerator, like we've said over and over. And I think pay to play is probably the only way people take it seriously. Otherwise, you're going to skip your meetings, you're going to skip your class, you're not going to work out. That's why I pay for a coach, is so I don't skip everything, right, and get crazy. Yeah.
Well, what's funny? There's anyhow, I'm trying to describe this the right way. There's something I'm doing. Let's just put it this way. There's something that I'm doing in the business realm, working with these higher level companies. And I told the guy that we were kind of putting this together, and I said, here's the price, and it wasn't a small price, it was a 6-figure price, and he said, that's not expensive enough. He's all, the people we're getting in the conversation with, they won't value it, right? It needs to be more. And I was like, okay, what's the number mean? He told me the number, and to me, I'm like, geez, that's a lot. For me in that realm, because I'm like, but he's like, they won't value it unless you hit this price point. He's all, at this price point, they're going to value it. He's all, what you do is great. It's amazing. It's going to work. But the price point you're pumping in is too low. He said, it's just not going to work. And so I was like, oh, interesting. So, right, it's the perceived value. When you spend the right money for you, you're going to actually do the thing. You're going to actually push forward and do it. You'll actually do it. And this is what's hard about the free stuff. The free stuff is free, and it's great, and you can find some great friends, but you're going to treat it like that. You will treat free like free. When you get something for free, we all know this. You give your kids a free car. They do not treat it the same way they would if they had given the 20 grand to buy the car or 30 grand to buy the car, right? They just don't. I didn't. I remember I beat the shit out of my car when I was a kid. And when I scratch it, I'm like, whatever. Didn't matter, right? And then I remember buying my very first car. It was a 1992 Saturn SL2. I love that car. It was, they don't even make Saturns anymore. But I get that car, and I love this car, and I treated it like, I am polishing it. Granted, it was a turd, but I polished up that turd because it was my turd. I was paying money for this thing, right? So money is the thing that helps you signify, is this worth it? Is it valuable? Might do it. My wife does the same thing. She's an online fitness coach for women, very specific niche that she goes after. She charges a lot of money. But because she's learned that when she only charged $200 a month, women would stop doing it. They just wouldn't do it. And then they blamed her because then they're like, well, you're a bad coach. I didn't get the results. And she's like, bullshit. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to charge you $1,000 a month. Yeah, and there's some people that are like, well, that's ridiculous. How could you charge that? But then the women that pay the $1,000 a month she now has in her sphere, guess what? They do everything she tells them. And they get the results. So these women basically bought their results because they bought a container from a coach that allowed them to execute at the highest level possible. It's just simple as that. If we were, as humans, could just do what we said we would do, we wouldn't need coaching. But guess what? You don't do that. You can't do that. I can't do that. Nobody can do that. And so, yes, we get into coaching calls. Coach Shane, you have coaching groups. You have coaching calls. I have coaching calls. There isn't a level at which I'm like, well, I have arrived. I no longer need anyone's opinion to help me or help hold me accountable because I'm really tricky. Yeah.
Well, and Trevor, I've had people look at me in certain areas and say, like, dude, why in the world do you have a coach, right? And that's where we talk about outgrowing your coaches, because physically I'm in pretty darn good shape, right? I like the way I look and all that, but I bumped into one gym where they did small group coaching, and meeting number one, they're like, dude, why are you here?
Right.
What are you asking me to do for you? And I had that conversation with a couple different people. So you can't outgrow a certain level coach, but then I found a higher level coach and suddenly got, 5 or 10% better,
Yep.
right? Maybe more than that. Boom. So I've upped my coaching game to a higher level coach who coaches higher level people,
Yep.
right? I mean, is the price point more? Yes,
Yep.
definitely, right?
But you're paying to extract that little bit out of it, right? Because the lower level coaches, they'll accept your bullshit lies because you intimidate them, right? When you show up in good shape, they're like, oh, he must know what he's talking about. I don't know that I can tell him that his squat form's wrong, right? Whereas the higher level coach, they look at you and they're like, hey, dipshit, your knees are over your toes. You got to sit your ass back a little bit better.
Not only that, they'll be like, you did pay me a bunch of money. Why don't you do my program?
Yeah. I get it that you went on ChatGPT and Chat told you that you should do this and this and this, but you okay, what are you paying me for then? Like, I told you to do it this way because I'm watching you and you're not doing it the right way. And
So you can't outgrow your coaches, but I think definitely there's any area of your life you want to improve, you get a coach, right? I mean, 100%. I don't know why business would be different than fitness. If I swimming, if I want to go play golf, I'm going to hire a coach, right? I'm not going to go try to do it on my own. And that coach is going to accelerate my process. Same with jujitsu. I mean, I can't imagine trying to learn jujitsu by watching just videos and a book.
Oh my God. Well, I'm sure there's books though that literally tell you how to do jujitsu. And they
because I own 2 of them that I got after I started with a coach though, right? Just to practice, see a little bit of things, but to try to do it all yourself sounds ridiculous.
Well, it would be I'm laughing because I'm like, I know a little bit about martial arts and I'm like, that would be, you couldn't learn it that way. There's just no,
But we try to do business the same way. Inherently, running a law firm or having a business of any type, we think, oh, I could just do that, right? Dude, it's the same way. It's if you think about it, you're like, it sounds pretty ridiculous. You're just going to suddenly know how to do everything. You're not.
No, you don't. And you need the guidance. You just do.
And you can learn it through hard knocks. You can learn it abysmally slow, or you can get an accelerator.
No. So as we wrap today, it was a great way to end it and leave you with that. So obviously, that's what we do here at the Legal Edge coaching, right? And we coach attorneys just like you to help you scale and break through these invisible ceilings. So if you don't have a copy yet, go get a copy at legaledgecoaching.com. Like I said, it's free, but the value inside of this will literally change your firm. And one of the cool things with the book, that gives you a taste, right? And then for those of you who qualify, not everybody qualifies, but those of you who qualify, we have decided for the time being, especially with the launch of the book, to offer up a one-on-one conversation with attorneys who own their own firm, doing at least $3 million a year, to really dive into your firm and help you implement the things inside of the book and really create a 90-day map for what you would need to go into, what are the first obstacles you need to overcome, and how to implement the strategy so that you can at least begin down the road of, and it's like we were talking about, right? Being the mirror of mirroring back, hey, here's where you're actually at, here's where you think you are, but here's where you actually are. You're trying to get here. Here's the map and the pathway to get there. Let's avoid the dumb shit that both Shane, you and I did along the way. I mean, and that's really what the conversation would be about. So if you're interested in that, again, get the book. That's the first step, legaledgecoaching.com. And as always, this show, it's a labor of love for Shane and I. We want to help attorneys just like you. So if you got value from today's show, please give us a like and a subscribe. That's how this show grows. And we appreciate it as we watch the numbers on the backside and we see the show growing and more people getting value from it. It's our honor to do it for you guys, and hopefully you're getting value from this. You can go back through in many of the episodes we have. We do different series on different types of different areas in the firm, different things you're going to work on, different things you can go dive into. So there's tons of value inside of it. So share this show up with somebody else who also might get value from it, depending on where they're at in their life as an attorney. So that being said, we appreciate you guys being listeners, and we'll see you guys next week.